Open the meeting for the Plaistow Planning Board of Wednesday, September 1st.
Do you need to call Dean downstairs to get on camera?
Yes.
We don't have to.
There we go.
Oh, now you're on.
You already know.
All right, yeah, thanks.
He heard us.
All right, so I just repeat that in case we weren't quite ready. So welcome everyone to the Plaistow Planning Board meeting of Wednesday, September 1st. We got word our chair is trying to connect remotely. We have not been able to successfully make that connection, so we'll be waiting for that to happen. In the meantime, we will continue with the meeting. So, Charlene, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
So you said Tom is trying to connect?
Yes.
Okay. Timothy Moore,
Here.
Laura Millette,
Here.
Karen Robinson,
Here.
Maxanne Dobson,
Here.
Greg Talon,
Here.
Bill Coy,
Here.
John Cashel.
Here.
And that's it.
Okay, thank you. So, first item on the agenda is review and approval of August 18th minutes. Is there a motion on those minutes?
I move that we have the
Aaron
minutes.
makes a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Greg seconds. Any discussion on the motion?
Good.
Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Carries 400. I think, as everyone is aware, the public hearing was an application from Heidi Bonchot regarding the Rock Rim fundraiser. That event has been postponed until next year, so obviously there's no need to hold the public hearing, which brings us to the second scheduled public hearing, a preliminary design review submitted by Howe Plaistow LLC of a proposed lot line adjustment, lot consolidation, and subdivision to create 3 lots. One new lot proposed is to be developed as a warehouse distribution facility, and the 2 other lots proposed for continuation of the existing ones on the properties. Lots would be serviced by an existing right-of-way intended to remain private. The properties are 214A Plaistow Road, Tax Map 45, Lot 1, Map 45, Lot 2, Paniello Plaistow 216RE, Michael J. and Joseph G. Sr. Paniello, owners of record, 216 Plaistow Road, Tax Map 45, Lot 3, Paniello Plaistow 216RE, Michael J. and Joseph G. Sr. Paniello, owners of record, and 218 Plaistow Road, Tax Map 45, Lot 4, Kevin C. Paniello Sr. and Maria C. Levin, co-trustees. All parcels are located in the Industrial 2 zoning district. Okay, so this is a preliminary design review. We don't often have these for those members that are new. And the key word is preliminary. It's an opportunity for an applicant to come to the planning board to discuss some design facet of a later proposal. These design reviews generally are not continued. Information is presented. We have a chance to comment on it. None of the comments that are made here tonight are binding, and none should be construed to be presidential, being either for or against the overall plan. So with those few words said, and obviously there's no, there's no vote. And so the idea is for the applicant to get an idea of generally how we might feel about some design aspect of the plan. So with all that, I'll turn it over, and you can introduce yourself for the...
Yeah, good evening. My name is William Bergeron. I'm with the firm of Hayes Engineering. To my left is Wayne Finnegan, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Holland Development, and How Plaistow LLC is actually the applicant for this project. Also in the audience is Michael Pinello, who is the current owner of the property. Like Wayne, just say a few words, and then I will try to run you through the information that we presented.
Okay.
Good evening. Wayne Finnegan from Holland Development in Wilmington, Massachusetts. Thank you, John.
Yes, good.
Yeah, thank you.
So Holland Development, just a little bit about Holland Development. We are a developer. We've been in business for about 50 years. We focus on mainly industrial real estate development. Our footprint is around the Wilmington, Woburn area of Massachusetts, but we've since expanded. We're currently building a building in Haverhill, right off of 495. That's about 105,000 square feet. It's about halfway done, and that building will be completed in mid-January. Both in the Haverhill case and in the Plaistow case, our expectation is these are speculative developments for warehousing type of a use, which is a need in the marketplace all around this area right now. And we've identified this site, worked with Bill and Mike Paniello to design our layout, both from a land configuration and building configuration that we believe will work and optimize the site for the best benefit for the town of Plaistow and use of the property.
So those of you who are familiar with this, this site, it's basically a 33-acre parcel of land that is consisting of the rear parcel of the current location of the Century Container Storage Facility. The original right-of-way into this was constructed and approved by the planning board, I think in 1976. And subsequent to that, in 2000, at that time, or right after that time, there was a building constructed on this portion of the site, which still remains. In 2008, when Mike Pinello bought the property to put in the container storage facilities, there was a site plan review for his existing facility that's here, the additional current yard that's right there, and a continuation of the existing use there. That was approved by the planning board in 2008, as I indicated. So when the property became available for purchase, 33 acres in the back for the current use was something that Holland Development was interested in doing. Current use in the back for the bulk of the property and the lot that would be created would be about 25 acres. Was an old abandoned gravel pit operation that was done probably sometime in the early 70s or even earlier than that, and basically it left the site in a level condition, which is the condition it's in now. It's been basically unused other than people using dirt bikes and trail bikes in there. It's been unused since that time. The whole purpose of what we're doing here is to try to create frontage for the proposed new lot by the extent the current existing lot road or right-of-way ends at this location. So what we would propose to do is extend it into a standard cul-de-sac in that location. This would create this lot for the existing use, this lot for the proposed warehouse use, and a portion of this lot, the rear lot, is going to be combined with the existing lot that's here and the existing lot that's there. So actually, the continued use of the Pinello container storage will be all on these three combined lots. There's in your consultant has indicated that just should be a lot line adjustment, not a subdivision of that land, so we would address that obviously when we move forward with the definitive. And likewise, the extension of the roadway here would be added to the existing parcel that's there. And likewise, he indicated that that should be a lot line adjustment, not a subdivision of the lot. So, but the intent of this is just to create frontage for this lot and frontage for this lot. Where we ended up is that the existing right-of-way is a 50-foot right-of-way that's in there. So one of the requests that we have and why we need, why we're coming to the planning board in the way we did with the design, preliminary design information, was that we need direction from the planning board on how to proceed. The regulations would call for that to be a 60-foot right-of-way. It's obviously a 50-foot right-of-way. Its only purpose is to serve the one additional lot that we're talking about building there. So we thought it was in the best interest of everyone that a continued use of the existing right-of-way up to that point and the continuation of it for the new portion would consistently remain a 60-foot right, 50-foot right-of-way. Obviously, for us to go forward and develop definitive plans with all of the calculations necessary to go forward with the AOT permit, the septic systems and on-site wells, we need to have some direction relative to that. It qualifies, I think, if on your definitions, as a minor roadway because it's not providing access to any other roadways. It's a dead-end roadway, and for all intents and purposes, it's basically a dead-end driveway into these lots that are serviced by that. The existing lot, we've done some extensive testing on the rear portion of the lot because it was a gravel pit operation. And we have provided information to determine, number one, if we're going to be buildable or.
I wonder if this screen might be a little easier.
Is this one better than that one? Oh.
Yep,
For-
right, yeah,
Depends on where you sit, I guess.
yeah, right, it would help.
This screen doesn't take my pointer.
Oh, you want to get up?
Is
That's
the
what
other mic
happens with the
working?
TV. It doesn't take the point.
Is the hand mic working?
The one that's removable? Yeah.
This here?
So we can talk into it.
Hello?
Got a little clicker on there.
Dean was
You won't
here
hear
a
volume.
He was, he
You
was
won't
just
hear
here.
volume into the room. It goes directly into the television
You
or
won't
into
hear
the
it,
video.
but it'll record.
So it's natural voice in the room?
Yeah.
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 And then that goes into the broadcast?
Yep.
All right, so, as I indicated, this is the existing right-of-way. It was over in the early 70s and confirmed to be useful in the 2008 for continuation of this, the expansion of the container storage area, and this existing building was built sometime in the early 70s. We've done extensive testing just because it was a gravel pit operation. We wanted to make sure where the water table was relative to where it is because we want to be building in there. And we want to make sure we understand what the consequences are of the fact that it had been basically level. And all of this testing that we've done indicates it was basically a very good type of a gravel that was in there and very suitable for construction of the type of facility that we want to have.
Is there any plans to change the road as it comes out onto 125, onto Plaistow Road? Is there any plans to change that?
I will get to that, but
Yeah, we aren't there yet.
this plan right here shows we've been working with the DOT, the New Hampshire DOT. We've already submitted a request for a driveway curb cut permit based on what we have here. And what we've done in working with them is they've given us the plan, conceptual plan that they have throughout the state that has been around and they've had the meetings on. And we've had our peer review, not our peer review, but we've had our consultation with them for doing the scope of the traffic study. And what we've done is this dashed area is what the state plans on taking. And what, I'm sure all of you are familiar, but what the intention is to have one lane in each direction and have the turn lane. So with this driveway, we'd anticipate that we would have a dedicated left turn lane and a turn lane out as part of the process. I have a kind of a blown up section of that that shows what the intention is. So this is the existing right-of-way, the existing 30 feet. We've got 15-foot lanes in each direction. Would be coming out and blending in and expanding the radiuses to allow better access into the site now as an intermediate measure until the state does the actual construction. The input that we got from the state, we're in the process right now, we're probably almost 4 weeks into in a detailed traffic study that's been being done by Vanessa Associates. Vanessa Associates, I don't know how many of you are familiar, but they've done a lot of peer review work actually for the planning board on other projects that have happened on 125. So they're very familiar with this. And the DOT was very complimentary on what we were doing here. And they actually were working with us relative to getting the best bang for the buck for both the intermediate design as well as the long-term design. So based on the results of the detailed study, which DeVos was involved with, that was probably a 2-hour online meeting with DOT.
On July 28th.
Going over all of the details for that. And Dee had some comments that we incorporated into the study as well. So all of that data is being put together. They actually extended the limits of our survey work to Kingston and Kingston Road, as well as 121A as it comes down in front of the facility here.
So currently, your plan will probably be representing before the state modifies 125.
Yeah, this was our first guess to New Hampshire DOT as far as what interim improvements we could make
Okay.
by extending it and creating the additional, the dotted line that's here is actually where the existing pavement is. So we were creating an additional exit lane and an additional right turn lane into the site to facilitate the interim. The construction here is definitely going to be maybe 1 year, a year and a half beyond when we would anticipate opening. So we were leaving it up to the highway department with the curb cut permit relative to what mitigation measures they want us to do at this time versus the measures that they will do eventually. And they said it may be a combination of the two. We don't want to do anything that's going to upset what they want to do, and they don't want us to do anything that's going to interfere with their plans.
Thank you. Thank you.
This
for that
time,
answer.
this is kind of where we are with that in the process. Obviously, when the traffic report, which the Nest Associates will do, will have a very detailed analysis of all of that. But let me
Back to the other one.
It's not my computer.
Freeze.
No, I just got to find the arrow.
All right, run it?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Downstairs.
No, on the screen.
Oh, in this meeting. Might be Tom.
Yeah, I think it is. It's Tom trying to get on.
Sure. Want to sit down?
Yeah.
We can go back to where we were. We should be doing it. There you go.
Yes, I'm gonna do this. Wants to go between. So, this is the existing profile, coming down from the intersection of Plaistow Road to the existing end, and then this would be the new cul-de-sac. The interesting thing to know about Plaistow Road in this section is it's actually a banked corner. It's super elevated around this corner. And your subdivision rules and regulations have a 3% requirement for 75 feet from the edge of the right-of-way. The actual slope of Plaistow Road is 5.7% coming into our site. And that's a continuation of that until it gets into that area, and then it drops down to 6 to 7%, and then it runs out at the low point in that general area. So we've got several things that we need to consider going forward from where we are. First of all, is the 50-foot right-of-way, whether we're going to be able to go with that. Second is whether or not we're going to live with the existing condition that's been there since at least 25 years
66,
or so.
66.
It was originally constructed with, a foot of gravel and 4 inches of pavement, been maintained over the years, and actually is in pretty good shape right now. So to rip that up, just to add a few inches of roadway profile there didn't seem to be something that would be needed or warranted, but that's why we're here with the plans that we have.
Tom, can you hear us?
He's muted.
Maybe not.
Oh, he's muted.
He's muted.
Can you
might be muted.
Tom, can you unmute?
Gotta unmute him.
He should be able to unmute himself.
Yeah, he's
I
on
can,
mute.
Yeah, we should
I
be
can
able-
see
Tom,
him.
can you hear us now?
There he is. There
Hi,
he is.
Tom. Sorry about that delay.
Yes. I can only hear you on my TV, I can't hear you on my computer. That might be a me problem.
I would be happy to go back. I don't know have you heard any of the discussion today, or do we want to start back a little bit?
I think we can continue to go.
Well, ask him. Let's see what he
Yeah,
has to
I've
say.
seen everything to this point.
He has seen everything, yeah.
So we provided a significant amount of information. This is you indicated, it's not usual that you get this kind of information with a preliminary plan. This is the next step up, which is why we provided a lot of information, because we need direction from the planning board to proceed forward with what we need to do. Obviously, this is the first step. The definitive plan, we need to obviously generate, move forward to create the frontage. And one of the things that we wanted to do, we would like to maintain this as a private way, based on the unique interpretations of your zoning bylaws. Even when we create a subdivision roadway approved by you, unless it's a public way, it doesn't count as frontage on the creation of the lots. So if it's the desire of the planning board for us to maintain this as a private road, then we would need to go to the zoning board of appeals for a waiver on the frontage that counts the frontage that's say already existing on 125. So we'd have to get a waiver for the 2 lots that would be created. We anticipate doing that. If we're successful with that, then obviously we could make it a private way if the planning board so desires. If we're not successful with that, then we'd have to come back and make it a public way. And it's not necessarily what I think anybody wants other than a denial of the variance. And we've also provided you with a lot of additional information that's over and above what we would normally do for a preliminary plan. And we wanted to be forthright with the board about what we were doing and what we were planning on doing, so that you can make a determination as to what is going to happen on the site, and we're not holding back anything. This is what we fully intend to propose if we move forward with the project. That would be the construction of a 301,000 square foot warehouse facility, which is basically a state-of-the-art type of facility. Warehouses aren't like they used to be. They're very high-tech. There's a lot of robotics, and there's a lot of new type of procedures that are used in these modern facilities. They have no, as Wayne indicated, there's no user in mind at this point in time, but because of the lead time on the construction, and we're talking maybe a year and a half to 2 years, it has to come down further in the process to actually see if there's a potential user that wants to come in during the construction phase of the project. That's normally halfway through the construction phase is normally when they get people to go in. But our discussions with both D and the New Hampshire DOT was that they asked us to use the highest traffic generation numbers that we could possibly use for this, as far as what the traffic impact was going to be. And based on their recommendations on the scope of the traffic study, that's what we will do. The likelihood that we're going to end up with something as high, that's the highest use that we're doing is unlikely. But the New Hampshire DOT said, if you do end up with that, we don't want you coming back and having to modify anything. We want you to do it. We'll do the improvements and the mitigation for the worst case scenario. And if it's half, a quarter, or a third, so be it. You've got more improvements than you need.
Right.
So that was their intention. We followed that advice. So the traffic study that you're going to see is going to be significantly, probably more traffic generation than we're actually going to see on this site. But again, we didn't want to pull any punches. We wanted to make sure that everybody understood what we were doing on that lot. And currently, Mike's operation is currently in this area here. When we relocate and create that new lot, and the combination of his 3 lots together is where his operation will move from here to this general area here. It's approximately the same size as it was previously. It's just oriented a little differently than it was. So when we come back, depending on where we go with the definitive plan, we will have a definitive plan followed by or coincident with site plan applications for this and site plan applications for this. And the reason that we want to keep them all together is because hydraulically, traffic-wise, and everything, they're all tied together. So it makes sense to do a design that incorporates everything at the same time so that we don't end up missing anything or having one done and not have the other one done. So I think it makes sense from the planning board perspective. You know what you're going to get when you're approving it. And it also makes sense on our end as far as how to design things and how to approach the whole thing. Obviously, there's state approvals that are required. You know, this building is way over the size. AOT permit's definitely going to be required for both of these operations. AOT permits were provided for the previous operation of the theater. So, based on that, and based on what we know is the kind of what our objective is at this point, and we gave you a nice little preliminary estimate of what the increased tax value was going to be for this, and Currently, this whole site is assessed for $17,151. The projected tax base after construction would be $312,890. So there is a significant windfall or benefit to the town relative to moving forward with this, should you decide that that's where we want to go. So what we have on the first page is kind of the things that we would like to have as far as waivers that would be considered. The first one is the grade of no greater than 3% at the entrance to the roadway. In order for us to maintain the existing roadway and grades, we would have to require that waiver. I can't read the next one says is work and pavement improvements. Basically what we would intend to do is we would review the existing pavement, do any utilities that we need to do in there, put a leveling course, cross-section, and a leveling course, and then a top course on that. And we would install Cape cut berms on both sides to control surface runoff. That's one of the things I didn't say, but currently Plaistow 125 Road with the super elevation, everything just comes from the road into our site with no drainage reductions from the state highway. So we're dealing with a significant amount of off-site runoff that's coming into our site that we have to deal with. So we have that issue. There is a number of standards that you have on road construction that if we maintain the existing road with the improvements that we've suggested, we would need a waiver from those construction standards so that we could maintain the existing road and do the improvements that we're talking about. The existing facility and roadway and the buildings that are there are also served by overhead power. Your new regulations would require that to be underground. It is overhead power all the way to the end. What we would request is that we're allowed to use the existing overhead power to the end of the existing right-of-way, and then we would go underground into the new facility from the end of the existing overhead power lines. Gas would be underground, obviously, and connected to the building. Gas is available on 125, and we would continue to do that. So the creation of this cul-de-sac will have a driveway into the contained storage area, which will loop into the existing driveway that he already has that loops back up into that property, giving you a circulation pattern. Ours would have that circulation pattern around the building with the loading docks on this side of the building. And then the other regulation requires that we have to have an approved sprinkler system. I think you have in your files a letter from the fire department indicating that they had no problem with what we were proposing. And we are going to propose a on-site, either a water tank or a pretty large storage system to provide the necessary sprinkler system for a building of that size. And then the last one is the connection of the public water or sewer system, if it's within a distance that's buildable on the roadway. And we'd ask for a waiver from that because we don't think it's applicable, but we just want to make sure that we get that confirmation so that we don't have to do that. We also did an analysis. There's no floodplains or floodplain issues on the site. So basically, you might get sick of seeing us, or seeing me, but the process needs to be what it is. The preliminary design phase here is exceptionally important for anything moving forward. We definitely need the direction of how we proceed from this point. As I indicated, it would be extremely non-productive if we proceed forward without some type of a blessing from the planning board now on what we're doing. And if we have to go back and do a 60-foot wide roadway, I don't even know that that works, because a 60-foot wide roadway would, I think, potentially put Pinello's existing building in non-compliance, and I don't think that we want to do that. And it just makes a lot of sense for us to continue the existing right-of-way. We did have the peer reviewer review this. I think you have a letter in your files relative to that. We submitted all of the information. He's gone through all of even though it's preliminary, there's a significant amount of data that we provided to him. And the suggestions that he has in the notations of the state agencies that are involved are what we expect. And basically, the only thing that we think is that we need to do is, instead of calling it a subdivision lot, call it a lot consolidation plan, and just make sure that we get those terminologies straightened out. Other than that, I believe that this is basically where we want to be at this stage, and I'd like to open it up to any questions that the board might have.
I have a question, if I could start things off.
John, will you use your mic, please?
Yep. It's kind of a rhetorical question. You do know that this town requires a public right-of-way, but those are primarily for the purposes having to do with the politics of private ways versus public ways. This was a residential subdivision. You don't want to allow for private ways in residential subdivisions, because people that live there are eventually going to want to make sure the town plows their roadway, because they're going to figure out every winter they're getting a plowing bill, and nobody else is that's on these public ways, all the other neighborhoods. So that's what happens if it's a private way proposed for a residential development. What they're proposing is a private way for a commercial development, which to me makes a lot of sense for the town, and I'm sure it makes a lot of sense for them. They don't want the public involved with this particular roadway. Rather, they'd want to have it more under their control. And then, they're not going to be an entity that would be clamoring for the town to plow the road. So that's one of the reasons. I'm sure this is why you want it as a private way.
Definitely, and depending on who the end users are, it makes it easier for us to provide security or whatever else may be necessary for us. Some facilities want to have that type of security. Other facilities are, not as particular about it. But at this point, we don't know who that's going to be. And John's right. Maintaining the road when we want to have it maintained, and making sure that it's plowed when we need it to be plowed for a facility that's, a warehouse operation. As you can see, that there's going to be a significant amount of pavement adjacent to our building for the loading docks and the parking areas that are there. And we're not going to be waiting, to be, because it's a industrial, small, dead-end cul-de-sac. We're not going to be high in the priority list as far as plowing operations for the town. I'm sure they do a great job, but, we're going to be low on the list. It's not residents calling. It's going to be, a big guy that pays a lot of taxes saying, "Where's my plow?" So we'd prefer to have that done on our own merit, as well as the maintenance of the roadway. I mean, we will have truck traffic going in and out, so the maintenance costs on the roadway, if it's a public way, we don't want to be a burdensome to the town. We think that we can construct it, maintain it, and do the necessary improvements, but, we don't want to have the town be saddled with that kind of construction.
All right, so we have, a list of things, so let's kind of take them one at a time.
I had a question.
I did
Yeah.
too.
The road study you
Max?
mentioned, does that include Kingston Road also?
From the information that we got from the New Hampshire DOT was a detailed study that was just done for Kingston Road in 125. And they provided all of the information from that traffic study and the recommendations of that to our consultant, who incorporated that. And there's another additional study that was being done on 121A that the state provided the information to us as well. Obviously, traffic studies in the past couple of years have got a little wonky because of COVID and all of the reductions in normal traffic operations that have happened. They're basically back to operation now. We confirmed that with the New Hampshire DOT. But basically what they have told us to do is go back to traffic counts that were pre-COVID, marry those up with the post-COVID, and then make the adjustments to the traffic volumes based on those kind of conditions. And that's typically what both Massachusetts and New Hampshire have been doing for these projects. So yes, it included the Kingston study and included the other study. Plus, we're filling in the gap for the state relative to what they be doing here on this portion of the roadway.
My only concern, and you don't really have much control over it, I live off of Kingston Road, and a lot of big trucks, Mack trucks, warehouse trucks like to cut through. They're not allowed to, but they go through town and cut through Kingston Road, and I fear that now this new development that has all of these trucks coming in and out are gonna take that shortcut right by everybody's house. That's my concern.
Right. So, again, that's something that we actually discussed because Dee particularly was concerned with diverting traffic down 121A because it's a little bit shorter and you miss some lights. And what happens with a large warehouse facility is the drivers are instructed to go a certain route. Their GPS systems in those trucks wouldn't let them go on a 121A or any of the side streets. They direct them to be on the main highways because if you're driving a 55-foot box trailer, you don't want to be going through narrow streets or winding streets. So, and one of the things that we did incorporate in the traffic study is an actual count on the number of trucks that are going down 121A as part of what we're doing with our traffic information so that we can gauge what potentially that impact would be. So, yeah, Dee was very strong about that.
Yeah, just make sure Kingston Road numbers are added to that, because they do it a lot.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
And
can I
it's a
have a
big
question
concern.
real quick? Bill, you've been doing this for an extremely long period of time, and I have too. For the benefit of the planning board, can you take the time to explain to them the number one issue? And the number one issue with every development is traffic. So what is involved, this is a rhetorical question for you, but what is involved with a traffic study that you will produce? What's involved with that? What will it entail? How far up and down 125 will it go? And, what are the intricacies involved with conducting a traffic study? And then you're going to have a peer review, I would imagine, out of this planning board relative to whatever traffic study you produce.
So basically, the traffic study, the scoping of the traffic study was set up by the New Hampshire DOT. And the reason that they want us to include the Kingston study there's actually a warehouse development in Kingston further on, is so that any projected traffic coming from those facilities there in Kingston that are heading towards Plaistow are going to be included with our study. They were adamant about getting data basically between Kingston and Plaistow to understand what the existing traffic was, what the projected traffic was, and having all of that stuff added into the traffic studies as we were going forward. The other information was at 121A. We actually added that in at these requests because that was the limit of the study in that general direction. the New Hampshire DOT said that you're going to have enough information when you do the site traffic and get the traffic from the Kingston side. But we included the 121 study intersection going forward. But basically, it's all projections on a road like Plaistow Road, every one of those lanes is capable of handling 1,800 cars per hour, per direction. Obviously, that changes when you have interruptions in the traffic, or you have signals, or you have other things. So, but the capacity of the roadway itself is 1,800 cars in each direction. It's a matter of how you fit the new generation into that, and the traffic analysis does that. Again, it's computer generated, and it's an analysis based on gaps and everything else that's in the traffic, but it ends up determining whether or not you need a traffic light, whether or not you don't need a traffic light, you need a left turn lane, you don't need a left turn lane. All of those things are designed into the roadway design so that you don't end up putting traffic lights on a 3-lot subdivision, you don't put stop signs on a 3-lot subdivision, you put the appropriate measure in where the appropriate location is. And it's done, it's an art, and we're very comfortable with Vanessa Associates because I've worked with them for almost as long as I've known John, which is basically since the late 80s. And we've always had a good outcome on whatever the design is.
I just want to point out, too, the interesting thing with the peer review study to compare what the findings are of their traffic study, it's just a verification. We're going through a major traffic study and peer review in Georgetown right now, and it has to do with the 500-ton per day transfer station. And it's right beside 95. You know, after spending, you know, several months of the peer review consultant working with the traffic consultant for the applicant, you know, what you have to understand is that they're working from the same numbers. You know, they have the same traffic manual, which measures the amount of traffic on a per use, per square foot basis. They're professionals having to produce a traffic study that's based on facts, the facts that are out there using the same manual. It's very hard for a peer review consultant to end up, you know, driving a truck through any of the findings of a traffic study, because these are professionals putting their stamp and signature on their work. If it has any falsehoods involved with it, it does not reflect well. I mean, this is a small community of engineers, relatively speaking, practicing this same profession. And this particular profession is pretty much down to a science, especially when you're looking at traffic counts over a number of years. And the interesting thing that's happening out there right now, it's not a massive amount of traffic increase projected in the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's actually, they're projecting a reduction. And that has to do with the amount of people that are going to be driving, how many vehicles they're going to be associated with those people. You know, there's actual projections for, you know, less traffic congestion, believe it or not. I think the issue more so is whether or not the population is going to grow more so than what the projections call for. But, you know, over the last 10 to 15 years in New Hampshire, there's been a lot less population growth than what was projected 20 years ago and 30 years ago, and what was supposed to be taking place right now in New Hampshire. And, you know, the population growth has not been there yet. It's slowly but surely getting there, but it's much slower than it was back in the 1980s and the 70s, you know, and even during the 90s. From the year 2000 on, there's been a much slower growth of the population. And, you know, what happens when you have a slower growing population, you have a slower growing economy. So That's what these numbers end up producing with traffic. They're projecting out.
Just one other thing relative to the traffic also is that all of our work
Yeah.
is based on a review by New Hampshire DOT. And DOT is basically another peer review set of eyes that is looking at what we're doing. And they gave us the direction and the criteria that they wanted us to use for the analysis. And they were very clear that this is what we want, and we want it back. And we want it back clear, we want it concise, and we don't have to go looking for information. So, I mean, it was loud and clear what they wanted, and that's what we intend to give them.
I see Tom has his Zoom hand raised there, so we'll go to Tom first and then back to you, Karen. So, Tom?
And we do expect that the engineers are gonna have a lot more expertise on the facets of traffic and software, and gonna make their study known. But, you know, it's little things like what Max mentioned is understanding that Kingston Road does have 18-wheeler traffic, or Old County could get trucks coming through the center of town and then cutting through on Old County and then jumping on 125. So we do want to consider that. Also, coming south from Kingston, as you come around that bend, I think the traffic speed decreases to 35 miles an hour. However, you'd be remiss to find anybody who's not doing less than 50 coming around that bend. And with the warehouse of this size, 300,000 square feet, my company has a 100,000 square foot warehouse and probably has 200 to 300 vehicle trips per day. So I'm guessing there's going to be, we won't know until what kind of business is going there, but there'll be a large amount of trips that involve that intersection. And certainly that traffic's going to be a concern, not only with vehicles coming in and out in safety, but also where the trucks go. Do they come into 125 through downtown, or do they use side roads? All those types of issues we're going to want to explore.
Understood.
Yep.
Karen?
Well, just to add to that, too, I've been in town since 1966, and to say that traffic has not increased, or is still increasing, is ridiculous, because that's the one thing we've been complaining about the last 10 years, anyway, is the mess we have down here, right through Plaistow and down there, and then the shortcut. So it is increasing, and I just want to make sure this is not going to add to that, because that's exactly what we've tried to figure out. But there's a lot of spots down there in the middle of town that have not been figured out really very well, and there's a lot of streets and things coming onto it that people have not obeyed necessarily the signs we've had up there, and it's just more traffic congestion we do not need down there. So I just wanted to make sure that it was clear there's certain roads that we just prefer, that it has to be not allowed, down there. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, so, there's a few things that you wanted direction on. One was the private road. I personally think private road is best in this situation. It's my personal opinion. For tonight, is there, I see a few people shaking their head, so is there a consensus that this should be a
Yes.
private road? Okay.
Yep.
So whatever, however we have to work that into the plan is probably the direction we'll be looking for. Likewise, our regulation states you have to have a frontage on a public way. And I think if we're in consensus, this can be a private road, then obviously that's where your frontage is on the road, whether it's public or private. So I don't see that as, if we have to waive that, I think that, that's fine, or variance or whatever.
Yeah, it's just the stipulation in your zoning that we would have to get a variance for the lots, even when we build the road the way it's shown on the plan.
Yeah. And the other, three other road issues here. The 50-foot right-of-way, again, I don't have any problem with that. Is there anyone that's thinks
I
that
don't.
that should be?
It wouldn't apply if that's a private way, right?
Well, we can,
That's really,
A public
Yeah,
road,
well,
then it would be, then it would
Yeah.
actually be frontage, but it wouldn't be frontage if it was a private road.
well, right, but I mean,
Yeah,
I
no,
think we
it still
could.
has to be
it
frontage.
still has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Still
I think we
considered
could,
frontage?
even though it's a private road, I mean, we could, I suppose, insist on 60 foot, but
No,
I don't see any advantage here of doing that either.
no, no,
So,
Mostly because it's a cul-de-sac, it's not
Yep.
going anywhere.
right,
well, right.
it's a dead end.
Yeah, I just want to, before we go on, I want to clarify something.
Oh, Tom's saying something.
Tom, I just wanted to clarify something. You know, I'll just take up the floor for about 30 seconds. You know, as with any major development, I really want to be clear here. The number one issue for any town, whether it's Woburn, Georgetown, Plaistow, Hudson, New Hampshire, it's all traffic, right? So you're going to ultimately, as you have throughout your career, throughout my career, you have to ultimately prove to the people on this board and the community at large that this particular use and the size of this use and the associated traffic volume and truck traffic can be properly accommodated within the roadway network. And what improvements need to be incorporated so that this particular use can be incorporated into the roadway system without causing further harm. The things that have to come out in this review, you know, what are the associated traffic hours with this proposed use? I believe with warehouses like this, you have a lot of pre-AM peak hour traffic, and you have a lot of traffic during the day, post-AM and pre-PM peak hours, as well as post-PM peak hours of traffic. Those are the hours that roadway networks in this area still have capacity for. Roadway networks in this area, roadway intersections, roadways themselves, during the AM and PM peak hour when we're all going to and from work, that's where all the congestion is. That's where those levels of service F are all the time. So, you know, taking that into consideration in all these other hours of travel that would be associated with a particular use like this, those other hours of travel being hours of which the roadways have capacity, you know, how are you going to be able to situate and build this size building with its associated traffic volume and incorporate it into this community? You know, this community, as with many communities, suffers with a lot of traffic congestion. Coming here today, I had to utilize, I had to go through Haverhill. So instead of doing the north route from the east, North Street, I had to come up 125, and I measured how long it did take me. And I'm sure everybody in this room has measured how long it takes you once you're at 495 and you're getting into that queue, trying to make it to Town Hall or home in Plaistow. And it took me 8 minutes maximum to get from 495, and that was a queue that started at 495. It took me 8 minutes to get well on my way onto Main Street in Plaistow. I was surprised. You know, that queue used to scare me, like, oh my God, it must take an hour to get home from, you know, getting through that, but it moves. It's not totally convenient, but it moves better than people think. You know,
Well, that's, I mean, one of the things, obviously, it's going to come out in the traffic report, but I'm not going to be surprised to find that you're almost going to experience a counter-traffic flow
Yeah.
with this, because people leaving to go onto, you know, to go south are going southerly in the AM and northerly in the PM. In this particular case, you got the opposite. You got people in the AM going north and people in the PM going south. So,
I got a question for you, and I can't recall, but did you design the Lowe's in Woburn?
did not.
No. But in any event, that was an incredibly congested area, bad. You know, we were losing businesses in Woburn because of the traffic congestion. This was back in the 70s and 80s. And the state used to say, well, create the problem and we'll fix it. Well, they helped create the problem of over-traffic generation, but they didn't help fix it. You know, it was the local community working
still
as
haven't.
effectively with the private sector. And I bring up Lowe's because that project ended up incorporating all of the improvements necessary to get rid of all of the traffic bottlenecks and congestion that were causing actually deaths on 128 going on to Commerce Way, if you're familiar with the area. There was so much traffic congestion on 128 that people were just slamming into one another coming around the bend. High-speed traffic going into, you know, pretty much a dead man's curve, hitting a red light. It doesn't work very well for travelers.
Well, I can promise you that we're, you know, the traffic study is going to give us what the mitigation measures are that we need to. We're not going to be the savior to mitigate all of the traffic woes that currently exist, but we'll certainly do our best to make sure that any imprint that we have on the traffic is going to be mitigated by the measures that we take to go forward. You know, I'm not going to blow sunshine up anybody by saying that we're going to take care of all of the problems of the town or the state. So these traffic studies are done to show what appropriate mitigation is, and it's definitely coordinated, and particularly in this case where we have an active project currently being designed by the New Hampshire DOT in our location, and they've already taken the necessary measures to incorporate land takings and stuff on the adjacent properties. That process is going to be started as soon as they go a little bit further. But like I said, we don't want to get in their way, and they want us to help them where we can. And that's what the intent is.
Okay.
But that to the side, and that's more like that's more an issue for the actual site plans. What we're focused on really now is to get some direction on the plan.
Right. So a couple other thing on the roads. You mentioned something about a waiver of the design standards.
If we're going to maintain the existing pavement sections that are there down to where the cul-de-sac would be, we've proposed supplemental improvements to that, like the installation of the Cape Cod berms to help control surface runoff from the highway and things like that. Any construction that we do for the new portion of the cul-de-sac would obviously meet the new standards. So we're only talking about maintaining the existing pavement width and construction up to the point where the new construction starts.
Yeah. I guess my feeling about that, I think Keach gave you a similar in his letter, until we, if there's some deviation from the design standards that you propose and he approves, I don't think any of us have any problem with that. But I, you know, don't want to have a consensus or say that we would, you know, until we get down to the nitty
Absolutely.
details. And the other thing on the road was the slope at the
That corner.
125 intersection. Is that being discussed or involved in the DOT driveway permit?
Actually, they don't want us to alter their edge of, they don't know what their grades are. They instructed us to basically blend into what's there currently because they don't know what it's going to be. They've got the planimetric part of it kind of in their minds of what they want to do, but the actual design for when they put drainage and put this off-site improvements that they're gonna need to do, they have not done that yet. So in their minds, they want us not to do anything that's gonna interfere or give them something that they have to meet that they don't anticipate meeting.
Yeah, my only concern about that is if you're coming up at a higher slope with more traffic, is the line of sight. You know, if you're coming up a slope, it's harder to see both directions. So,
Yeah, the intersection sight distance for this, for the roadway, is gonna be in excess of 700 feet in both directions, which is, the intersection sight distance is the more extensive of the two. There's two different sight distances. There's a stopping sight distance, which technically, if you meet the stopping sight distances, you have a safe intersection relative to the traffic entering and exiting. The next one is a higher standard that says, even though you can get in and out with a stopping sight distance, some of the cars may have to slow down to let you do that. The next one up has the slowdown of any vehicles to a much lesser extent. So we typically would try to design to the higher standard, and I'm pretty sure the state's going to insist on that.
yeah. So, I mean, again, I think at this point, I wouldn't feel comfortable in saying it's consensus that we can waive that, but as the designs become firmer, I don't think that's a showstopper. I mean, I think, you know, we can
If
look
we
at the
have,
site
if,
plan.
if we have to maintain the 3% for the 75 feet, it's going to impact, we're going to have retaining walls on both sides of the roadway for a portion of down until we can meet the grade. And the 75 feet brings you, I think at the end of the 75 feet, you're going to be 16 inches higher than what the existing grade is. So now you have to blend that in further down the road because you can't start decreasing the 3% until after you get by the 75-foot mark. So it means that you're basically potentially building walls along both sides of the roadway down to the existing driveways, and which means now we have to reconstruct the driveways that are there, and it's an issue that we were trying to avoid. Obviously, Mr. Pinello's building is actually lower still. When you go into his driveway, you're going down a hill and going around to his driveway because his building is significantly lower than 125 in his front yard. And to some extent, the Buddy's Auto in the self-storage facility, the reason that they don't have access directly onto 125 is because they're in the same boat. Their facilities are significantly lower than 125. So it's basically a common access for both of those properties to be able to use this private right-of-way that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with the site plan that shows you don't meet that, but there has to be supporting material that says you can come in and out safely.
I think the fact that when we have the traffic report in hand, and then we can make a decision at that point in time, whether we come back and ask you, or we do it one way or the other and submit it, and if you don't like it, you tell us to fix it. I mean, but it's helpful. The 50-foot right-of-way is the predominant concern that we have at this point, because that dictates how we're going to design everything else. So that is a significant take on our part.
The other, well, another comment from Keach was your building height is proposed to be 52 feet. And that, I mean, that's in zoning, so it would require a variance for that, so that's not something that we can.
No, we didn't want to get bogged down with that.
Right.
The actual closest point of our building to 125 is over 1,000 feet. The closest abutter is more than 700 feet away, And the actual, because of the elevation of the building, even at 52 feet, you're not going to see that from 125. It's actually screened from 125. So it's rare, and it's very rare for me, doing this for a long time, that I have no abutters that are basically residential in nature. We are always, all of our abutters are surrounding industrial too, as well as ourselves. And we have no abutters that are within 700 feet of the actual proposed structure. I mean, that's a dream for me as far as moving forward with having that.
Well, I mean, the abutter issue was one. I mean, nobody wants to live next to a tall building.
Right.
But the other issue that I think was kind of the rationale for that design height was the ability of the fire department to put out fires. So I think you've got a favorable comment already from the fire department, so they've obviously knew about the 52 feet. So, I mean, if they're happy on that issue.
Right.
As long as you get the variance.
We didn't want to get bogged down with site plan issues, but the reason that we need that is because the building is 350 feet wide. The building has basically a sloped roof from the loading dock side to the back of the building. The back of the loading dock side is on the south side, and what we're doing is we're proposing all of the roadway, all of the roof area to be draining to the north side. And the north side of the site, we're infiltrating the roof, and we're infiltrating the after treatment, the parking lot areas that are there. So that we stay away from, all of our infiltration happens on the north side of the building and away from where the loading docks are on the other side of the building. Not that we're going to do anything but to pollute, but we want to make sure that we kind of separate those. So in order to tip a 350-foot wide building, it ends up being almost 7.5 feet of pitch that you need just to meet the minimum slope requirements for a roof. So that's what kind of puts us into that kind of a category of requesting that. But we had no intention of putting you in that, and we know that we need a waiver for that. So our intention is, our waiver requests are going to be for the frontage. I think that we need a waiver as well to make it a private way. We need a waiver for the height variance.
And the frontage, and that was a question I had. This particular lot lacks the required frontage. Is there any way you can figure out to adjust the lot lines?
Oh, yes. For whatever reason, when we adjusted the lot line for the driveway, we ended up stealing more than we should have from the rear lot. The frontage on all the lots will have at least 150 feet.
Okay, so you've taken care of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what, before I forget, that driveway has been in existence, it said, for 45 years?
Something like that. I mean, the one for, I know that the original site plan, the original planning board approval in 1976 for the right-of-way, the building was there then.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at is that just in our last meeting, we had a review of a project that had a lot of accidents, known accidents within the vicinity. So I think part of your traffic study should look into the history of that particular intersection and if there are any recorded accidents.
That's all part of the traffic
It's all
study.
going to be part of it.
Yeah, so, and what I'm also getting at, this alignment thing, at least it's a 5.5% negative grade. If it was a 5.5% positive going into the main road, that ends up being a problem. But, you can slip down into the road and, you're working your way out. Hopefully, during icy conditions, you have it well sanded so you can get out of there. But, that's the problem with the negative slope, is trying to get out, obviously. But at least you're not sliding into the road with the positive grade of a driveway.
So were there any other issues that you were looking?
It was whether or not we could maintain the overhead power to the end of the existing one and then go underground from that point.
Again, I don't have a problem with that. I think that was, I don't know, well, I know exactly how it's worded, but I think the intent was for new construction.
development, yeah,
new
it's new
build.
construction.
But
And
I don't have a problem with waiving something that's existing.
Already existing.
And the one last thing that we would have is the connection to the public water system. I mean, there's no, if the provisions are there, well, what we agreed to on the, actually on the plan was if the water line is, we agree in writing with the documents when you record, if you approve them, that we will connect to the water distribution system when it becomes available. I mean, we make that commitment.
Yeah.
We would do everything to make sure that that's done. Doesn't really make sense to do a dry line that may never get used. I mean, it's a significant effort, and it's a significant amount of money to do something that's, I anticipate that the water tank is going to be in the vicinity of 200 to 250,000 gallons.
Right.
So it's not like we're not going to have something that's pretty significant on site.
That's a point I was gonna make. If they can produce that amount of water, which I'm sure they can on that site, we may want them to take care of their own site. I mean, they're not a residential use,
Right.
that's going to be
Not condos and
interested in potable water. But if they can take care of their own, they're building a 250,000 gallon reservoir for fire purposes,
Yeah.
more power to them.
Oh, that's awesome.
I mean, if the existing fire suppression line was already there on the frontage, then it would be a different discussion.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we really wouldn't want to build a 250,000
But
gallon
it-
tank if we didn't have to.
It's not there now, and it's not clear when that might be extended, so. And it's, I mean, there's nothing to say you can't do it in the future. I mean, that's, so,
Mr. Chairman, can I make one more other point?
yep.
Because I don't want this gentleman to leave thinking that, we're going to want them to mitigate everything along 125. But part of your study should be identifying anything you find that should be improved upon and working with DOT and to work with the town. So, identify what's out there. You may not get tagged with it, but, at least we'll know traffic issues that we should be
Yeah, we
working
have
on.
to know it.
Based on expert review.
Yep.
One of the things that the DOT, in our discussions, was that when they do the 121A, they're talking about a roundabout, they're talking about some other safety improvements, they're talking about another study that's going to happen on 121A. So they kind of instructed us, look, this gives us a good foothold on what we need to do, and it gives us a good base plan moving forward so that the data that you're going to have here, we're going to use in the study going forward for the additional studies for the town.
So it's a public hearing,
Ron's
so
still there.
is anyone in the audience with questions or concerns? I think they're kind of all,
Make sure that it's not going to access in a bad way.
This is our abutter to the south, that Buddy's Auto Body and the
Oh,
South,
okay.
Dick's Auto Body and the self-storage facility.
Okay.
They
that's-
understand the impact.
That was my other question.
They understand the impact that the proposed takings in front of their property are going to have to them, so it's significant for them.
Exactly. Oh, I can see
Oh,
that.
I've met with them, and I understand the concerns.
What is the two businesses? I mean, the ones that are already there now, what are they?
One's an auto body shop,
Okay.
and then the other one is a self-storage facility. That's,
We have another self-storage over there?
it's been there for a while.
Yeah, it's in the strip mall.
I think that probably was the first one, actually.
Right? Yeah, okay.
Well, no, Bresnahan.
They're all attractive, aren't they?
The bar shop's been there about 32 years, and
Yep. I was going to say that.
is about 16 years.
Yeah, it hasn't been that old. Yeah, 16, 16 years.
All right. So,
Just didn't want to see any more.
as we mentioned up front, this was just design review. So have we answered all?
Absolutely. It's exactly the direction that we were looking, or
Oh,
hoping
thank
to
you.
get from the board. And
So, sorry, Go ahead.
unfortunately, you're probably going to see us again, probably more than you want to, but
Okay, okay.
we'll see. John, as I indicated, John and I have known each other since the late 80s, and we've always had a good relationship, and I appreciate John and Dee Voss's, assistance going forward with this and helping us to try to get you the information that you need. So, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank
So
you
we'll
very much.
Close this design review.
That meeting that Dee went to, I wasn't able to go, but I knew they were in good hands, because I don't think anybody knows the roadways in this town better than Dee. She's involved with that 121A
Oh, yeah.
project. Yeah, so we were well represented.
All right. So we just have a couple of small items left. Under old business,
Tom's still with us, or did he go?
the 125 Development Corp. Newton Property Planning Board letter.
You know what, is this one? Yeah, 125, get copies of it. I intentionally kept this short and sweet. I did go over it verbally with Tom before this meeting, and she was here. This doesn't pay to go out and meet people these days.
Oh, yeah, we had to write a letter, right?
Yeah. When I write communications, I try to keep it to one page if at all possible, because you don't want to lose anybody's attention span, and you do really want to get the point across. So in this short and sweet letter, I'm citing to Newton that, per the advice of town council, basically, we're asking Newton, because the development is in Newton, all the development activity is in Newton, for them to take the lead. Again, this is in accordance with town council advice. And once they're through with taking their official action on the plan, we also know the applicant's going to have to submit to the town of Plaistow Planning Board for definitive subdivision approval, the same plans. So those plans will have to pass muster with us for either approval as submitted, approval as amended, or denial.
What happens if it's denied? They have to go back to the drawing board?
They probably appeal, but, because the subdivision, construction, the roadway, and everything is in Newton.
Right.
Any building plans right now shown on this
Sure,
development is all in Newton.
Right.
Doesn't get within, like, 1,800 feet of Plaistow. Again, I went over this with Charlie Cleary to make sure that we're not making any missteps. Because at one point, as this board knows, I wanted them to put a note on the plan that would abdicate any responsibility of us having to review it. And that is because there's no development proposed in Plaistow that they did not have to come. Well, RSAs, no matter what, and Charlie agrees, it shouldn't be, but in the RSAs, there's a particular statute that specifically requires that any proposed definitive subdivision of land involving two communities,
Yeah, yeah.
no matter what's taking place on that plan has to be endorsed, approved by both communities.
John, was Newton looking for us to approve it first?
No.
And we're not?
No, no. And Charlie's saying that the only logical thing for us to do, and this is explained in the letter, is to respectfully request that they take the lead.
Okay.
Because it's all in their town. And then when the applicant is done with Newton, then they come over here. They won't be able to record the plan either, that's the thing. Recording of plans necessitate planning board endorsement. They can't record a plan of
Without both.
subdivision of property
Right, without both planning boards
Yeah.
approving it, right?
Yeah. That's the funny thing too with subdivision plans. It's not so much that we would be creating buildable lots.
Right.
You can lot line adjust, you know, a lot line between abutters. And the zoning really doesn't apply to a plan like that. It's for recording purposes only. And in order to record a plan, whether it's for conveyance purposes of land or having to do with the creation of a new lot or, you know, a building lot, you have to have a planning board endorsement. You have to go through a public process. And then once the planning board's satisfied, they can sign it. That's the only thing that allows them to record a plan at the registry. It wasn't always like that. People used to be able to subdivide prior to 1970. You used to be able to subdivide land without planning board
So
endorsing
if the
it.
developer doesn't come back to Plaistow, the registrar would catch that.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
I'm so long-winded for a short story.
All right.
Jim, I mean, you read the letters. That's sufficient?
John,
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's
Tom's going to be signing it eventually.
that's,
Yep.
yeah, that's all you want to say.
Yep,
Yeah.
Less is more.
Thank you.
perfect, yep,
That's my
there you
mom.
go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Less
less
is more.
yeah.
Well, you tell them more, then they'll pick it apart. You just give them the facts.
That's right, you got it.
I know.
All right, so,
Can I chime in real quick, guys?
any other
Now he's
questions about the
Tom's
letter?
back.
Maybe we
Tom's
can turn
back,
the
yeah, where
volume
are you,
up.
Tom? I thought he was supposed to be on here.
Hold on, let me see, what type of television is that?
Yeah, I
Has he
just had a
heard
quick
everything?
question. John, where in the plans does it state that you do not intend to develop on the Plaistow sliver of land?
So the next thing on the agenda
Wait,
is,
Tom's talking.
Wait,
Go ahead, Tom.
I was asking, where on the plans did it advise that they, or show that they weren't intending to develop on the Plaistow land and that they were gonna be 1,800 feet away?
That note will still be inscribed on that plan, because when it comes back before us, that'll be one of the conditions, I would suspect, of the planning board approval of that subdivision plan, that note actually be on that plan. It's on there now, but the time to make sure of that is when the planning board approves it, or whatever it does with it, if it gets that far. Is that okay?
Got it, thanks.
Yeah. The other thing I've been working on through the last meeting is verifying the footprint of the warehouse, self-storage facility, the really nice-looking one.
oh yeah,
Oh,
what
that looks
about,
like it's
building?
on the road.
what about the frontage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far, you mean the setback from the front?
Yep,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
setback.
Both Dee and I are working on it. We got the aerials. You know, as far as we can tell, they're set back. They haven't encroached in any closer than where they should be. But I want to give a full presentation for the board's next meeting.
Okay.
I just really wasn't able to pull it all together. We have the photos
right, original.
of it and the architectural rendering, and we've been working with the engineer to make sure that that's what they're building.
Yep,
You know, because that's the pretty picture we want to see at the end. And, you know, that wasn't just some fictitious, you know, wannabe building. You know, that's what we're going to get. So,
better,
yeah. So, I mean, please, you know, no one's going to get away with pulling the rug out from us or the wool
No,
over
they
our
won't.
eyes. You know, right?
right.
Well, I think it was supposed to be like 64 feet. You know, how like.
Yeah, so they had room.
Our minimum is 50.
Right.
And I don't know why that number sticks in my head. I think they told us 64.
64,
I
65.
know the building right now, their footprint is no closer than 58 feet at its closest point, so from that setback. But then there's a right-of-way It looks a lot, it does look a lot closer than it is, but
Yeah.
50 feet isn't a real big distance. It really isn't.
They're supposed to have room for the driveway and the
Oh, yeah,
trees
no, they have
and
that.
the grass.
Yeah, no, there's gonna be a driveway. There's actually
Okay.
one of those atriums that
Yeah.
they drive under. So that all will be part of this thing. You can't build buildings and show us renderings that are part of the permanent record without following through with it,
Right,
because that
Okay.
creates lawsuits.
yep.
All right, so the last item on the
Thank you.
agenda is preparation for zoning review. I think John attached one of the new bills that was passed,
I like the tree one.
so,
That almost goes without saying, but you might as well put it in writing, right? Legally.
I guess next meeting, we'll be pretty busy with public hearings, but our October workshop, we really need to
Yeah.
zero in on
Has anybody
zoning.
gone on to that website that I mentioned in the memo I sent out?
I read all the other stuff, I didn't get on the website.
Yeah, there's a lot of statutes as usual, but this is the season of glory of endorsing all the statutes. And
Okay.
there is one in there that we're gonna probably have to entertain.
Okay,
Did you get a chance to read through that, Tim?
Just briefly.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of really interesting laws. You can spend, a good afternoon going through
see the
them.
list they have, oh my God.
Yeah. But, this is the season. They're
Obviously.
doing a lot of signing up there.
All right, is there any other business?
So on our
Any
next,
questions?
our next workshop, though, I think that should just be a workshop.
Right, I
Nothing,
agree. I agree.
no, this one's only gonna take 20 minutes, none.
Yeah,
I
just-
think,
I agree.
no,
I
no
agree.
public hearings at all,
Yeah.
because we gotta start on it.
Were we prepared, was anybody prepared to go over any zoning items tonight for introduction purposes, or?
I had a question, I don't know if it's legal or not, just
Yeah.
this whole thing made me think of, is there any way we could do a zoning ordinance on the traffic on Kingston Road, or, because it's a state, like, could we ban,
That was on my list.
could we ban tractor trailers, and then if they don't follow the zoning ordinance, we can then get code enforcement on them? Just some type of legal repercussion, because right now, there's nothing.
Tim could probably tell you this
It's a state
blindfolded,
road,
but.
I know it's a
there's
state road,
There's a
but,
ton, there's a ton of statutes having to do with state roads. And state road means state authority over the right-of-way. And a lot of communities would like to curtail heavy
years.
trucking on those state
Yep.
highways. That takes a lot of convincing and a lot of wrangling, and you may be able to corral some of the truck traffic away by working very diligently with the state. You might be able to curtail some of the stuff. Like this main street here, right?
Yep.
Which is a big problem.
Yep,
The rumor I hear, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, anybody else, I guess if we took over,
yes, if we owned it,
Ownership,
yeah.
yeah.
If we took ownership of it, then it would be a lot different.
so
But
would that be a warrant article, a zoning warrant article, if we wanted to take
We've done it before.
ownership?
Didn't
the
pass.
will of the people shall not be denied.
Right, so is that,
If it works hard enough and convinces enough people.
We
So
would
is-
take over the road and the maintenance and the paving and with plowing, we already do, but we're getting paid to plow those roads.
Yeah.
Yep.
We would plow them out of our own taxes if we were required to do that. Now, some of the little small towns in the western part of the state, they seem to have a strip of a main road just as you go through the town hall, and that little strip is owned by the town.
Yes,
And on both other sides, it's a state road.
Right.
I don't know how they accomplish that, but that may be an easier way to solve things.
That would be
because
great if they do
can't
it.
come through that little strip.
Yeah.
I had asked that question about,
We did.
where we're doing the traffic calming study.
Yep.
Could we buy that section, because that would stop a
That's right.
lot of it.
If they can't
But
get
would that be
through.
What was
something
the
we
answer? Did
put
they give you a-
before on the zoning?
I mentioned it,
Articles?
yeah.
That would have to be on the ballot.
I think,
I would say you really want to
Yep.
work with the Board of Selectmen on that particular
Yep.
issue, because
Yep.
they're in charge of the public rights of way.
Right.
And they would be the official body.
To put it on the ballot. Yep.
I think step one would be to convince the state to make 121A, take it off of Main Street and put it coincident with 125. So when you come up from Haverhill, you'll see the sign 125, 121A, go up 125.
Right.
And just Main Street, Plaistow. As long as that state route is attached to Main Street, I don't think there's much of a chance of doing too much. But if the state was willing, and who, I have no idea whether they would be or not, to do that, or eliminate 121A altogether until the intersection at Main
bridge
Street and
there, Main Street,
125. If 121A started at that point and went north, then again, Main Street itself would not be a state
Just be
route.
Main Street, yep.
So I mean, I think that would kind of be step one. I don't think the state would allow us to take a chunk out of it. But I don't know.
We'll ask.
But it all has to be coordinated with the Board of Selectmen because they're in charge of roads.
I
whereas
think
planning
it
board is
I think
not.
it needs a low-lying pedestrian bridge that does, that only, it's like 15, maybe 15 feet above the roadway.
Yeah.
Then you run,
Like going to Pollard School, so they don't have to cross over.
then
Yeah,
you
I
run
like
into,
that idea. That's
Yeah.
run into
Bridge
big,
right there.
Yeah,
yeah, you
Until
run into
somebody,
problems that-
until somebody drives their
Yeah.
Big RV that needs
Not a good
13
idea,
feet of
but-
Yeah,
clearance.
they're
Like
gonna
Starrow
be
Drive and then
screaming
move
at
the kids
us.
to school, if
Okay.
someone always hits it.
School buses.
Yeah.
There'll be,
Or a
there'll be
school
an
bus,
accident this
You
weekend
got
because
that.
they're all moving in, so. Yeah,
So-
it has to be a well buttressed overpass, so.
If you have roads and bridges that are not well-maintained and the load, weight becomes an issue, then you can put, so you'll see them around, max gross vehicle weight of
Yeah.
XXX.
Anything, right.
But, I mean, you can't be arbitrary about that. I mean, you just can't
And
stick
how do
them
you
up.
enforce that?
Yeah, right.
Well,
They don't blow up when they go over it.
But, I mean, one thing is for sure, there are certain portions of that roadway that really are not suited for 18-wheelers. It's just not, you know?
They do it. I
A lot of
follow them.
it's a
I
speed.
actually follow them and take the license plate.
We get a lot on Kingston Road.
Follow them right to that stupid place. I know right where it is.
Well, if that
All right.
traffic calming process were to lower the speed limits, that would be an incentive for the trucks not to go through that way.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if we had a section that's
How many
20
do you
miles
see
an
obey
hour.
our little 30-mile-an-hour?
Well, if it was brought down to 20 miles an hour in certain sections, that's a simple type process.
It is a shame when you drive down it, because it's pretty close to being considered a scenic way.
Right.
Right. Right. Village.
Yeah,
Village of
yeah,
Boston.
it's supposed to be the
There you go.
village.
Supposed to be a village.
yeah.
It was.
I mean, that would be the next thing to ask in the Village Center District, if they would consider lowering it. They won't, I don't think they'll go below 25. But, and, I mean, let's not shoot our, I mean, I'm all in favor of reducing traffic on Main Street, but I don't know that I'm willing to go 20 miles an hour.
That's what I was saying. How many do you know?
I use the
go
road every day.
30?
Yeah, you'll have a
Right.
kid on a bike passing you.
Yeah, so,
We're all gonna be riding bikes pretty soon.
Yeah,
We're all
right.
gonna have bikes.
The normal average
Cars.
speed going through that section is about 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, no,
They
30
don't care
people
what
go
the
through
signs
30.
say. They put
Can't even go 30.
those speed signs there, and if you just there and watch,
Yep.
They're up there, 39, 40, 41.
That thing's going all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh, it
It
does,
goes by.
it does, it does. That's what I
Yeah,
mean.
it's easy for speed to creep up, but when I go by one of those and I'm going
You do, then you go
Slow
back
down.
up.
faster than the
Then
sign
speed up
indicates, I do slow down. I mean,
Brings out the teenager.
but,
in you.
Yes, let's see how fast I can go. See if I-
all right, so are there any other planning board issues? Any other business? Anyone?
No,
Tom,
I think
anything else? Take that as a no. So we will adjourn the meeting at
He's probably not
8:15.
there.
He's on his way here again.
Yeah.